Welcome to the Civically Correct Academy series on mastering standardized test question structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll explore why understanding these structures is crucial for performing better on the Florida Civics EOC assessment. It's not just about knowing the content, it's about how the questions are designed. Every question has a specific structure, and once you learn to recognize these patterns, you can answer faster and more accurately. By identifying the structure, you can focus on key information, avoid common traps, and save time on the test. Mastering this skill will boost your performance and build your confidence. Get ready to learn right from the start. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll break down 9 common question structures found in standardized tests. For each, I'll show you strategies and key phrases that signal what type of question you're facing. Here's a preview of what we'll cover. Direct questions. Straightforward recall of facts. Scenario-based questions. Applying knowledge to real-world situations. Cause and effect questions. Understanding relationships between actions and outcomes. Comparison. Questions. Identifying similarities or differences between concepts. We'll also explore sequence chronology. Questions. Ordering events or steps. Interpretation of visuals or documents. Analyzing charts and excerpts. Cause-effect scenarios. Predicting outcomes. Assertion. Reason questions. Evaluating both a statement and its reasoning. Multiple answer questions. Selecting more than one correct answer. Each structure has specific indicators to help you recognize them quickly. In this series, we'll look at examples and teach you how to confidently approach each question type. Let's get started on mastering standardized test question structures. Get ready to learn right from the start. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine the direct question structure. These are straightforward questions that ask you to recall facts or concepts directly from what you've learned. They usually test your basic knowledge and understanding of key terms, definitions, or principles. Key indicator phrases you'll see in direct questions include, what is, which statement describes, who has the power to. For direct questions, you simply need to focus on recalling the fact or concept. These questions don't require much analysis, just accurate recall of the information. Now let's look at some examples of the direct question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine scenario-based questions. These questions present a real-world or hypothetical situation and ask you to apply your knowledge of civics principles to figure out the correct answer. Key indicator phrases include, in the scenario where, based on the following situation, what should happen if? When dealing with scenario-based questions, it's important to recognize the key actions or elements in the scenario and connect them to the civics principle that applies. Now let's look at some examples of the scenario-based question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine cause and effect questions. These questions test your ability to understand the relationship between an action and its consequence. You'll need to know the causes behind certain events or the effects of specific actions. Key indicator phrases include, what was the result of? How did this lead to? What was the consequence of? For these questions, focus on understanding the cause or effect and how it connects to the event or principle being tested. Now let's look at some examples of the cause and effect question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-taking tactics. Mastering standardized test question structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine comparison questions. These questions ask you to compare two or more concepts, ideas, or processes. You'll be asked to identify similarities or differences between them. Key indicator phrases include, how is this similar to? Which of the following is different? Compare and contrast. When answering comparison questions, focus on the distinguishing features or commonalities between the items being compared. Now let's look at some examples of the comparison question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine sequence chronology questions. These questions ask you to place events, processes, or steps in the correct order. Understanding the timeline of historical events or government procedures is key here. Key indicator phrases include, what happened first? Put these in order. Which step follows? To answer these questions correctly, make sure you're familiar with the chronological order of events or the sequence of steps in a process. Now let's look at some examples of the sequence chronology question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine interpretation of visuals or documents, question structure. These questions require you to analyze and interpret charts, graphs, or text excerpts. You'll need to draw conclusions based on the visual or written data presented. Key indicator phrases include, refer to the chart, based on the graph, look at the document provided. For these questions, focus on extracting the key information from the visuals or documents to answer the question accurately. Now let's look at some examples of the interpretation of visuals or documents question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine cause-effect scenarios, predictive questions. These questions ask you to predict what will happen based on a specific civics event or principle. You need to understand the likely outcome of certain actions. Key indicator phrases include, what is most likely to happen if? What would be the next step if? In predictive questions, you'll need to recognize the cause-effect relationship and make an educated guess about the outcome based on your understanding of civics principles. Now let's look at some examples of the cause-effect scenarios, predictive question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine assertion-reason questions. These questions consist of a statement, assertion, and a reason. You must decide whether both the assertion and the reason are correct, and whether the reason properly explains the assertion. Key indicator phrases include, assertion, reason, which statement best supports. For assertion-reason questions, you'll need to evaluate both parts independently and check whether the reason justifies the assertion. Now let's look at some examples of the assertion-reason question structure. Welcome back, Civics students, to the Civically Correct Academy series, Test-Taking Tactics, Mastering Standardized Test Question Structures. I'm Civia, your standardized test strategist. In this series, we'll examine multiple answer questions. These questions require you to select more than one correct answer from a list of options. Key indicator phrases include, select all that apply. Choose two of the following. When answering multiple answer questions, be sure to carefully read each option and select all the answers that fit the question's criteria. Pay attention to the number of answers you're being asked to choose. Now let's look at some examples of the multiple answer question structure.